Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ham Radio Dude. If you haven't been here before, I make ham radio related videos, but also tech related videos. Things like programming in Arduino, programming with Python, and so forth. And then at the end of the day, I try to bring them all together. 3D printing. Try to bring it together with ham radio and so forth. Today's going to be no different. Today I want to talk about configuring a SIP client for your Windows computer to work with the Allstar network. Specifically, we're going to be using a program called IAXRPT, and we're going to do some configurations in there, as well as some configurations in your Allstar node. Now, if you don't have an Allstar node, you could still watch, but basically what we're going to be doing is connecting our computer to our Allstar node so we can talk to other nodes around the world. Let's jump into things. And again, thanks for checking out the channel.
This is Ham Radio Dude.
Before getting actually started, I figured I would actually show you what we're going to do, and in that way, you will have visual representation of what we're trying to accomplish. So this is a program called IAXRPT, and what I can do with this program is I can click Connect, and when I click Connect, I've now connected to my Allstar node, which we'll configure later. So now that I'm connected to my Allstar node, I can actually do things like transmit. This is W9FFF. And the cool thing about that transmit is that is where I made the video on walking you through building the IAXRPT foot switch. So if you wanted to have a foot switch, you could easily do so. But when I transmitted there, I actually transmitted to my Allstar node and then in sequence any node that my Allstar node was connected to, as well as my Allstar node transferring RF around the local area. So now I transmitted and nobody responded, but if they did, I'd be able to hear them on my headphones and I would be able to have a whole conversation with them on my computer. To get started on things, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to walk you through configuration of the SIP client first because A, it's the easiest, but B, I think that it's going to help make sense once we get to the Raspberry Pi or the Allstar configuration for the node. What you're going to see here is an IAXRPT. If you don't have it, just download it and install it. The link's below. But on the top, there's a toolbar, which you can't see. You should see File, View, Options, Keyboard, and so forth. Go ahead and click on Options, and then click on Accounts. And what's going to happen is you should see a window that starts to look like this. Now, you're probably not going to see an account already listed there like I have. Instead, you're probably going to want to just click on the Add button, which is obviously right there where it says Add. And once you do that, you should get a pop-up to occur. And the pop-up's going to look a little bit like this. We're going to type in some information, and I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in my account name, which for me, I'm just going to make it 476881, which is my node number. And then a description. I would call this something like Home PC1, Allstar 476881. And I got to apologize for the keyboard errors. It's really hard for me to type across the keyboard there. Now it's going to ask me for the host, and this is going to be the IP address of your Allstar network. For example, my Allstar node is on my local network, and I'm not going to use this SIP client anywhere but my local network because my computer is a static computer. So I could type in my IP address of my local node, which if you don't know how to do that, you can go into your router and find your node. Let's do that right now. Here we are in my router, and your router might be different. You might not have a Linksys, you might have a Netgear, but you should be able to log into your router. And for me, I could look at what I have going on in my router by clicking devices. And when I click devices, there's going to be a list of all these different, for example, my fusion reflectors on here and so forth. And I page down and I find that I have a node name called 476881 node, and it's located at 192.168.1.106. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to copy that, and we're going to jump back into the other program now. And so in this other program, it's going to ask for the host, and because I'm not using this anywhere but a local network, I'm going to use my private IP address, which is this. Now, there are ways to configure everything so you could connect to this publicly, but to be fair, I'm using a static computer and it's a little less secure to do it that way. But the other thing we need to do now that we have the host configured is we need to assign a port number by typing in colon and then 4569, which is the default port for the Allstar network or for your Allstar node. Now, if you changed your node port number when you set up Allstar, you're going to put this in at this point. But typically, if you're watching this and you're just getting started, it's going to be colon 4569. And that's the port that Allstar is going to connect to authenticate and use this SIP client. Now, this is where you should be writing everything down as well, because eventually we're going to need it again, and I'll show you that in just a few moments. But let's go ahead and make a username. For simplistic sakes, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type in my username as W9FFF. And again, that'll come in handy in just a little bit. Next, we're going to go ahead and make a password up and then confirm it. Your password shouldn't be something stupid like let me in or password or 123456, whatever. It should actually be something with a little complication to it. And the reason I say that is because if you end up ever making this a public connected SIP, you're going to have issues with people maybe trying to brute force that password. And if they get the password, they can connect to your Allstar node, and then they could maybe cause some chaos on the Allstar network. So we don't want that. Make sure your password's secure. For the sake of this tutorial, though, I am going to make my password kind of easy. And again, make sure you have everything written down. Now, the rest of these options aren't actually going to be anything you need to worry about. You could just leave them right now as they are defaulted. And I'm going to click Save. When I click Save, you could see then it actually shows the account that I just set up right here. Let's go ahead now, and I'm going to show you how to get everything configured in Linux or in your Allstar node configuration. And actually, there was one thing I forgot. So if you go back into your editing of this account we're building by going into this window right here and clicking on your name and then clicking edit, you should get a window that looks like this right here. And everything looks good except where I have type duplex, you probably still have type simplex. So all you got to do is drop down and click on duplex and then click on save. And then let's go ahead and jump into the SSH portion of things. And what I should mention as far as the SSH portion of things goes is I'm assuming that you've already set up your Allstar network yourself and you're familiar with how to use an SSH client to get into your Allstar network. If you aren't familiar with that kind of stuff, there might be some articles in my past videos, or you should be able to look online to find out how to SSH into your Allstar node. Above me, you're going to see a text file and you're going to see a bunch of information, but this information is actually going to correlate with what we just set up. So let's just kind of break it up here. On the top, you see in brackets W9FFF, and you also see that on the bottom right below that line, W9FFF in brackets. And what that is when Allstar is referencing both of the files that we're going to work in, it uses that as a reference on where to look to see if this user is going to be authenticated. So you could put Joe on there as long as Joe's on the top in brackets and on the bottom in brackets. You could put Santa Claus ho 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 there, whatever, as long as it's the same. And then we go through the username that you set up. You're going to type that there. Notice I don't have any quotation marks, and it is case sensitive, so make sure that you're using the correct case. All this stuff you should be able to copy and paste from the description below and then just replace it with your information. So replace your username with what I have for my username, W9FFF. No reason at all to change type equals user. The context you could change to something like W9FFF or whatever your username is, just for simplicity's sakes. We're going to continue to go down though, and you see secret. And this is the password that we set up that I told you must be secure. Again, I'm not using a secure password only for demonstration purposes, but my password is H0H0H0 capitals and everything. So I'm making sure that I put that in the correct case sensitivity. Host dynamic is going to stay the same, disallow, and the rest of it is all going to stay the same. Now on the bottom here, we're actually going to see, again, W9FFF here correlates with W9FFF up here. And then extension equals, and this is going to be your node number. So my node number is 476881. And I'm going to type that right here as well. And I'm going to type that right here as well. And I'm going to type that right here as well. So my node number is going to go in 4 places below. Once you have all your information put where I put my information. Go ahead, and what we're going to do in Linux or in our Allstar node is we're going to go down to option 9, Start Bash Shell Interface, and hit enter. We get this terminal window or this black screen. So in this tutorial I'm logged in as root, which is typically not a good idea. But if you're not logged in as root and you go into this next step, which is the bash shell interface, you're going to have to, first things first, type in sudo, S-U-D-O, and then a space, and then a dash, and an S. And the reason you're going to have to do that is that makes your normal user kind of like a power user. And without being a power user, you probably won't be able to modify, edit, or copy any of these files in the directories we're going to be going into. Again, I'm root, so it wasn't a problem, but if you're not root, sudo space dash S, enter, and then continue on with these next steps. And what we're going to want to do in this terminal window is we're going to change the directory. Again, these commands will be below, but change directory /etc/asterisk. And now that we're in there, we could do a couple things. I'm going to clear my screen real quick just so we have a fresh start. But I could type in ls, which is going to show me a directory listing essentially, or a list. And it shows me all the files here. You don't really need to worry about too much. But what we are going to do is, first things first, is we're going to back up 2 files. And it's critical. I'm telling you right now, it's critical that you back these up, because if you mess up, you'll have something to revert back to in the future. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to cp, which means we're going to copy, and we're going to copy extensions.conf and then space. And now this is where we're going to put the new extensions.conf. Extensions.conf.back, and sometimes I even write the date because I have so many backups. Okay. First one copied. You could see right above here that it copied successfully. And now the second file that we're going to actually back up is going to be this iax.conf file. And we're going to do it the same way. Cp iax.conf space and then iax.conf.back.12.13.2020, for example, and hit enter. And I'll see that it copied successfully. So now what I want to do is I need to modify those 2 files. Let's start with iax.conf first. Once we're modifying iax.conf, we're going to page down here for just a little bit of time. And what we're going to do is we're going to get to this point where we start to see like include registration and stuff along those lines. What I'm going to do is somewhere around here, it doesn't necessarily matter where, as long as it's not within one of these places that has the brackets. So for example, right above any of these, for example, right above radio proxy or below radio proxy, but before radio proxy out, anywhere in there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set up our new user. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our notepad here. And in our notepad, let's just go ahead and copy the top part. And very simply, I do like to make a comment first. And by making a comment, what you do is a semicolon. And I will write test sk development. That way, if I ever have to go back, I know that I was the one who was testing something for development purposes. Then I'm going to hit enter. And since I copied everything already, now I just need to paste it. In my client for SSH, if I right click once, it pastes everything. So that went pretty quick. But if I page up here, I'm going to see that, yep, there's a couple of things here. There's my username in there. Everything that we already made is in here. So my password, H0H0H0, it's all in there. Great. I'm using the Nano client. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to type in Ctrl and X, and it's going to ask me, do I wish to save these changes? And I'm going to click yes. Now, the next thing I need to do is modify the extensions.conf that we had already backed up. And it's going to be very similar. Let's go ahead and take this part right here, copy it from the notepad, and then in our bash window or in our nano editing software, we're going to go ahead and we're going to somewhere around here, like for example, under default before radio secure, we're just going to go ahead and paste that file that we just copied. And again, there you go. So now we have W9FFF here, which will save Ctrl X and then save yes. And that references W9FFF in the asterisk window. If everything's done correctly, we should be able to now reload asterisks, first things first. And to do that, you could actually click exit here and you can go to run asterisk CLI client. And I think it's important that we do it this way because we're going to actually watch the authentication occur too. So I'm just going to type in reload right here. It reloads a bunch of information. It basically starts everything back up or restarts it. And now let's jump back into our IAXRPT software, but let's leave this bash shell open so we could see what happens when we try to authenticate. And I'm sorry, I do want to mention one more thing for clarification purposes and to make it less confusing. In this file here that we have all of our information, there's a section there where it says content. And I think before I actually said that these brackets are what communicates with each other, but I do believe that context equals W9FFF should also be the same as at least the extensions context right here. And for the simplicity's sakes and getting things up and running, I made this bracket and this bracket the same, as well as the context the same as my brackets. I just wanted to clarify that because I don't want to confuse people too much, but I do want it to be set up the easiest way as possible. So if we take that to the side now, and again, we are here in our IAXRPT software, but we're also here on our Linux client. I mentioned we're going to go down to run asterisk CLI client. And the first thing you could really do is type in reload. And that's going to reload everything on the server or in the node. And then what we're going to do in IAXRPT is we're going to click the connect button, which you could see highlighted right here. And when we click the connect button, what we should see, the connect button's right here, what we should see is down below, we should see whether or not it was successfully connected. So I click connect. You could actually see in the Allstar command line interface that, long story short, a bunch of stuff happened, but it did authenticate me, accepting authenticated call from my IP address locally. Now we're here in IAXRPT, and there is a couple things. If you need to configure your sound options, so you're using an external microphone or a headset, you can click on options and go to the device, and it should be pretty easy to select what devices you're going to use. But we're connected now, and all we got to do is click transmit, and let's see if this works. W9FFF. And obviously there was a lot of echo there because I had a radio right here, which was essentially causing a feedback loop. But that's proof now that everything is working here. If we wanted to disconnect from networks, we could easily go *10 to disconnect, like, for example, from our last network. You'll see there in the command line interface, it disconnected. But I don't even have to click send or transmit or anything. All I have to do is hit the actual DTMF code. So now if I want to connect to a node, *3, and you'll see here, it's going to connect. And honestly, it's that simple to get our SIP client on our computer set up with the Allstar network. And it's that simple. I'm glad I was able to visually walk you through getting everything set up because there are a lot of guides out there that I was reading and they're all contradicting each other or they're all difficult to understand. But that's because I don't learn by reading, I learn by doing. And visual cues are very good for a lot of people. So I hope this helps somebody. And if it did help you, please consider hitting the subscribe button. What that does for me, if you don't know, is when people subscribe and people are watching my videos or liking my videos, it gives me a little bit of revenue. And that little bit of revenue really helps me out because I do these videos for free. It might take me 8 hours to make a video and edit a video and all that stuff, research and so forth. And just that little fraction of a cent, maybe a couple of dollars a day that I make really helps out to continue this channel and let this channel continue to grow. So anyway, I appreciate it. Thanks for considering the subscription. Until next time, I'm Ham Radio Dude 73.